Hello and greetings from the UAE. Welcome to not just a packed forum down here at Expo 2020 Dubai. So welcome to this, the second edition of the ABLF Talks hybrid at Expo 2020 Dubai. We would first and foremost like to thank none other than His Highness Sheikh Nahyan Mubarak Al Nahyan, the ABLF patron and also UAE cabinet member and Minister of Tolerance and Coexistence, for gracing us with his presence, giving us some of his time a little earlier on today. And a huge thanks also to His Excellency Tariq Gurg for that welcome note a little earlier on as well for His Highness. I think we're all inspired by the words of both, and what a way to kick off the talks. I hope that's given you some food for thought with regards to questions to send in for our all-star panel here. We're happy to see you yet again in person and virtually on this prestigious platform that has hosted in the region of 120 leaders in meaningful conversations and collaborations for the last 2 years now. First up through our TV show on CNBC Arabia, then through the ABLF Talks virtual conclave on the cutting-edge digital venue ABLF City, where many of you are joining us from now. As you are well aware, these talks are being streamed virtually through the ABLF City platform. So I'd like to extend a warm welcome, if I may, to all our audience members from, I'm told, from the team behind the scenes, 33 Asian nations who are currently logged in at the moment and saying, well, I'm sure they're saying, I wish it was Expo 2020 Dubai. But the good news is the doors are open, the gates are open, so come on in and be part of the millions that have experienced Expo 2020 Dubai already. We are here all the way through to March the 31st, and then the legacy continues straight after that. Great to have all of our guests with us today who are joining us for the in-person session. Also a warm welcome to the Asian diplomatic missions and various trade bodies who've taken time to join us. Thank you also for joining us virtually as well. And thank you for being with us at Expo 2020 Dubai. I'm Tom Urquhart, your host for this edition of the ABLF Talks, held in partnership with our friends at the UAE Ministry of Economy. We are here with a great panel of speakers, of leaders, of inspirers, if you like, who will share their perspectives. A number of perspectives, some specific perspectives on all things technology, and the use of technology as a transformative tool for education and inclusivity, and of course, inclusive education. Their views add tremendous value to the core theme of the ABLF Talks, which, as you well know, is Innovative Strategies for a Decade of Challenges, Asia 2020 to 2030. All of the conversations that we are having and all the conversations you're about to hear are powered by 4 innovative super brands. Big thanks to the Aditya Birla Group, a $45 billion conglomerate and Fortune 500 company. To Zand for being with us here today, for driving the significant tech-led narratives of the post-pandemic era as the first digital bank in the world to provide retail and corporate banking. UAE's DP World, who've had a busy weekend, when they never ever have a busy weekend, that is. The global supply chain solutions giant who returns to the ABLF stage this year as our legacy partner, as does Etisalat, the world's fastest mobile network anywhere in the world. Also contributing this year, I've got to say a huge thanks to the important narratives of the ABLF Talk conclaves. Key partner, UNICEF. I mean, UNICEF have been extraordinary supporters and partners on board, and we're honoured to have the support of our long-standing partner, Dubai Cares, who continue to be such loyal partners in what we try to achieve. The global philanthropic organisation whose innovative programmes towards ensuring inclusive and quality education for children around the world is a shining example of, empathetic leadership moving forward. A warm welcome also to our media partners who are tuning in, and some of them are with us here today. CNBC Arabia, Khalij Times, Hindustan Times, Arab News, and of course Muscat Daily. If you have any speakers that you would like to see at the next conclaves, and there will be more of the ABLF Talks, feel free to tweet now at ABLF. Couldn't be simpler, at ABLF, or drop in your requests on our Instagram and LinkedIn pages at the moment. For the virtual audience as well, you can also ask your questions, any questions from the panel or for the panel. All you have to do is, again, get onto Twitter at ABLF, pop the questions in there virtually. Instagram, LinkedIn. We're monitoring them throughout, and we can put them to the panel. Talking of that panel, I've kept them for far too long. Let's get them here on to the stage. November is the month that we come together to celebrate inclusivity and fostering tolerance, an agenda that has always been at the forefront of all initiatives of the UAE government. A little earlier on, His Highness mentioned this very fact in his address. Our guests today will provide us with valuable insights on the challenges that we all face today around the world, especially in the education sector in the areas of youth empowerment. And together, we will explore possible solutions to give us a roadmap for, a roadmap of sorts, if you like, for the future moving forward. So who's going to take us there? Well, our very distinguished panel today is led by a true champion of education. He is one of the primary drivers behind the success of the organisation that he's helped to form and, of course, lead over the preceding years. A true advocate of global education, the global education agenda. An absolute pleasure to welcome to the stage the CEO and Vice Chairman of Dubai Cares, His Excellency, Dr. Tariq Gurg. You get the choice. You get the first picks, whichever one you want.
I'll sit next to you.
Okay, come on up, Tariq. You sit alongside me. Joining Tariq up here, another extraordinary advocate and ambassador for change. She's been in senior roles with the United Nations well over the last 20 years. She knows this region so well, and of course is the UN Resident Coordinator and Deputy Commissioner General of the United Nations, right here at Expo 2020 Dubai. Please welcome to the stage Her Excellency, Dr. Dena Assaf. Dena. And joining us to make up the panel as well, a true pioneer in more ways than one, a leading advocate of change, a leading advocate of inclusivity, and a leading advocate of giving people of all ages, but specifically children, a voice. An absolute pleasure to welcome to the stage UNICEF and the first ever from the UAE, UNICEF National Ambassador and President of the Asian Paralympic Committee, Mr. Majid Al-Usaimi. To you all, we thank you very much indeed, and thanks very much indeed for your patience. Thanks for being with us, and thank you for agreeing to be on the panel with us as well. It's so kind of you all to give your time. And Dena and I were just talking here and saying, you know, what are the common themes that are going to stitch us all together here? And obviously, inclusivity is going to be one of them. Education is going to be another. And this mood of change that we sort of find ourselves in at the moment. Dena, ladies first, if that's okay with you. We're going to ask
That's why she's in the center.
We're going to ask you for your thoughts. I want to obviously I want to look to the future, and I want to talk about change, and I want to talk about how we're going to create that. But I think, again, with all chats and all things we have like this, there's only one place to start, and that's been the recent past, the pandemic. Again, something of a catalyst for change. What impact has the pandemic had, from your perspectives and where you sit, on the all-important SDGs and our commitments nationally to them? And maybe specifically the impact on children's education in the region, the results you're seeing?
As you can see, I have some nice papers with lots of statistics. And I want to make sure to get these numbers right because of the importance of what you've talked about. But yes, we do need to recognize the impact of the pandemic. This has brought to the light to all of us, of course, the vulnerabilities that we have worldwide. Now, we already had challenges, and we knew that, and the SDGs were meant to help us to move forward as a planet. Then the pandemic came, changed many things. Not only did it make our lives so difficult, but the most vulnerable people have now become even more vulnerable. From the United Nations statistics, over 124 million people are now well below the poverty line, beyond what they were before. So our goal of trying to reach zero poverty through the SDGs now is fully threatened. The vulnerabilities, of course, increase when you look at who are you talking about. And in countries where there are crisis environment or environmental crises, etc., that makes it worse. And women become even more vulnerable. According to the UN, 255 million people worldwide have lost their jobs. What does that mean for all of us? For children, since you talked about education and how that all weaves in, from the UN's statistics, we know that over 2/3 of school-age children worldwide have lost school of at least almost a year. Now, this has a major impact, as we can understand. So when we talk about moving forward from this pandemic, we need to realize that it goes beyond the lockdowns and the personal challenges that we have faced. But women and children, specifically people who are in vulnerable situations, minorities, are the ones that have really suffered from this pandemic. And the weaknesses in our structural setups in our countries have now shown their face, whether it's the education sector or the health sector, etc. So I think this is a good place to start so that we recognize that what we're talking about goes beyond where we were pre-pandemic. The pandemic has taken us backward on many critical areas.
Majid, to that end, and in terms of the pandemic as a game changer, a moment for reassessment, how much impact has it had? And I don't know whether it's negative or positive, but what's the impact been on the Paralympic movement, both here in the region and further afield?
Well, I have to say first, thank you very much.
Not at all,
it's a
thank you.
pleasure to be here with you all. And it's good that I have this is the advantage of you having your own wheelchair, so you're not searching for chairs. Probably, yes. As a president of the Asian Paralympic Committee, from the time I been elected, because I had polio when I was 2 years old, so I've been through the experience of the challenge every day and every hour. What does it need for me to live normal life in terms of getting equal educations or health services, or having also doing some sports and recreation areas. So the challenges in some areas in our Asia, the biggest continents, are really, it wasn't, they didn't need for a pandemic. It's already a pandemic there before these circumstances happened. I've been traveled to Laos, to Cambodia, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan. Personally, I don't want to sit in the capital. I went to the villages. I met those people who are really don't have the minimum things to live their life, even the wheelchairs or devices. So imagine how it is difficult also to engage them into the education system, either schools or virtual. And then on the bright side of this, I visited Japan, China, Korea, Saudi Arabia, and whatever it is here in United Arab Emirates. And I think there is some balance if we are generating all efforts together towards the goal. So through the pandemic, I had an individual virtual meeting with each MPCs. It took me like around 1 week to complete 45 countries, but it was good to go through what is the difficulties and challenges for our athletes. And let me tell you something, sports was the gate for those athletes, for us to show you what we are able to. But it's only the gate, the tools, to other areas in the communities, like education or sustainable health system or recreation or whatever it is, accessible environment, friendly environment. Through sports, you are rebuilding this member of the community, this athlete again. So he will be able to learn, he will be able to work, he will be able to show. And this cultural, when it is changed, it's not just the family or the community, it is also the government will start to update the legislation, the laws for people with disabilities, the rights of people with disabilities. So yes, it has a lot of challenges, and one of the things also I success to do is to sign an MOU with the UAE Red Crescent. And I had a fruitful also meeting with Dubai Cares 1 year or before the pandemic regarding discussing some of the projects. If I knock the door and I said, please, let's do something in sport, they said, no, it's not our, but it's not about sports. It's about a whole tree which we can pick fruits from, but we use the sport to get Majid and others to be the future leaders and independents.
Yeah. Yeah, here. Tariq, this session is called A Greater Urgency with Higher Stakes, focusing yet on the UN SDGs at the moment, but as a great advocate yourself for change and driving the need for inclusive education, I'm fascinated to get your takes on the sort of the data that you're getting at Dubai Cares at the moment about the impact. I mean, has it made us more empathetic, the pandemic, in terms of education for all, or less?
Well, the situation was about to become better.
Yeah.
We had, if you go back probably 14 or 15 years ago, where were we? The numbers were very bad. A lot of children were, if you focus only on children and not the youth at that time, we had around 128 million children out of school. This is 15 years ago. The number before the pandemic dropped to 81, 82 million children. Now, if you put the youth with them, the number shoots up to 216 million. But if you put the youth into the old equation, the issue is it was the MDGs back then. They didn't consider the youth. That was the biggest issue. But anyways, the numbers were looking good. We were going towards the right path. Were we doing a good job globally? I don't think so. If this is pre-pandemic.
Yeah.
So if finance to global education remained exactly the same, meaning not going up, not going down, on exactly what's happening, we will still end up having around 800 million young people who were students finishing high school by 2030 and not having adequate skills for the future work. So it's a huge issue. So we need to get the finances up. We were working on a good path, but what has happened with COVID, as Dena mentioned, all our calculations went in shambles, and we had to look into the whole thing. But it did one thing. You see, the issue before, there was no unity in education. The sector has been fragmented. We have different UN agencies, different global mechanisms, different non-government organizations, different government organizations not working together towards a unified path, a unified goal. What COVID did, it accelerated the unity.
Yeah.
So we have more unity than ever. But then what has been created is a digital divide, because we all moved towards digital learning. As Dena mentioned, there was so many closures, and to give you the exact numbers, we had 1.6 billion children and young people out of school, 60 million teachers not being able to go to school, and those were divided in 190 countries. We have half of the households in the world not having connectivity. You have today 1.3 billion children and young people, ages between 3 and 17, probably, or 5 and 17, they don't have access to connectivity. So without having, since we have the unity, without having a proper alignment and a global strategy towards providing connectivity and technology, and having a proper global consortium towards us, and putting an agenda and putting an operation agenda to it, because one thing is to put a strategy, and another thing is how do you operationalize this? And without a force here, without funding, and without a force there and funding, it will not happen.
So just staying with you quickly on that one, because obviously big focus for us on all things technology, with good reasons, through the ABLF Talks and its role. You mentioned there about the digital divide, and yet another of the arguments is that one thing that being stuck behind a Zoom call or a Microsoft Teams call or whatever that the pandemic created was a better relationship, or a reassessing of technology and the need for technology. So with that in mind, has technology, or how can technology, from what we've learned over the last 2 years, make education more inclusive?
Look, Tom, the education problem, look, my job is focused on developing countries.
Yes.
But my job as a global citizen who's into education, I have to look into the evolution of humanity. And without education, that will not happen. We will just end up having so many flying cars in the future and hyperloops that will take us not to cities, but to countries in a matter of minutes. But I think by 2050, we won't have the human knowledge and know-how and capability on how to maintain these new gadgets. Why? Because technology is advancing on a high pace and education is not evolving.
Yeah.
We are innovating, but then what's going to happen? If the youth of today are stuck in rural areas, as Majid mentioned, if those people are earning less than $1 a month, if they can do 2-3 moves on TikTok and give a small 2-3 minute talk or a comedy or a laugh on YouTube or post some photos on Instagram and get those likes and get those views, they can easily earn between $500 to $4,000 in one post.
Yeah.
So you tell me, to a rural young person in Kyrgyzstan, as he mentioned, does he need education? Look, it's all about the money end of the day. It's about survival. So if you're talking about technology, what technology plays a role, we should look into two things. Some countries need the high tech. Countries like European countries, like America or the Americas, or probably the Gulf countries, where we are advanced countries, and probably the Far East, we're advanced countries. We need high tech into our education systems. But in rural Africa and rural Asia and in Latin America, they're not looking for high tech. They're looking for low tech. And the issue is we don't have even low tech to those people. But without connectivity, without having every single school in the world connected to the internet, we won't solve the problem. And that's what GIGA is doing, which is a partnership between ITU and UNICEF. And we championed this because we invested in the business case which led to GIGA, and we funded the first in-country pilots in 6 countries. And with GIGA, we're trying to connect every single school in the world with internet. So if connectivity is there, technology will be resolved, but it's just a matter of high tech or low tech. What we don't want, what we want to avoid, is the no tech at all.
Yeah. Dena, just following on from that, we've talked about sort of, the risks of isolationism with rural communities, of what poverty can do in terms of depraving or denying opportunities. I mean, in your role with the UN, obviously you address a number of conflict areas, and one thing the pandemic has not put an end to is conflict. Conflict areas continue. What do you find? What does, again, the data teach us about technology in conflict areas and the impact that can have to, again, open up opportunities for children, say, in conflict areas?
Well, I think Tariq hit the nail on the head, as they say, in indicating that we recognize the opportunity that technology can provide. However, that digital gap does exist, and even more so, of course, in crisis countries. The GIGA initiative, as mentioned, is an excellent initiative that's also supported by the private sector and other entities. And as the UN, we recognize that you can talk about technology as much as you want, but until it becomes democratized, and not only for certain segments of society, where then we could be creating even a further gap in society. So from the UN's perspective, we tend to look at it from that angle. We have the principle of leave no one behind. I don't know if you've heard of that under the SDGs. And this is a very important principle to us. So as when we work in different countries, we're looking at who are those people that are being left behind, and what does that mean? Now, another element I'd like to add to this conversation is, as we look for solutions, I think it's not a one-size-fits-all kind of a situation. Technology can provide for us many avenues and information and knowledge sharing that maybe didn't exist before, but it is not the end-all, be-all for everyone. And we need to look at education, and of course, Dubai Cares are experts at this, in a holistic manner to make sure that we're not leaving out other forms of education. Additionally, I think with technology, we also need to recognize, especially if we're targeting children, the threats that come with technology. So we need to make sure that, and we've all heard of, even on the simple side of bullying online, but also other forms of threats that young people can have through persons who don't have their best in mind. So, you know, for example, in the UN, we have UNICEF is working even here with the UAE in developing even an AI solution to be able to detect where there may be threats to youth online, so that, because it's very hard to manage that sort of thing manually. So AI could be a solution. But we need to recognize the threats that also come with technology.
Just to elaborate for a second, we're talking about online safety here. That's what Dena is talking about. We're talking about pornography. That's what we're talking. We're talking about child pornography that is surfing the internet, and no one is doing anything about it. We're talking about content. What's the content? Because through content, the threat comes, exactly what Dena said. Content would not be something like, hello, hi, join us, we're going to be against a certain government. They don't do it that way. Content is driven deeply into the curriculum, into the agenda that goes into your subconscious mind, that throughout the years it triggers something that you become radical. That's the issue. So all of this needs to be controlled. And as Dena said, I think she was too humble to say we need to be careful. This is not only to be careful, it's very dangerous. And we really need AI and algorithms and even human beings. And one of the things we're promoting in our pavilion downstairs is, do we have an AI auditor as a job in the world? Sorry to take it.
No, not at all.
And just to build on that, and perhaps also you might have some additions to add, is also learning how to use technology in the right way. So we have the threats from the external, but even the users themselves need to be able to know how to communicate correctly through it. And the reason I mention is that we can find also divides with people of determination, where, you know, what if you're blind? What if you're deaf? Are we now isolating them even further by using a technology that they cannot access? Is our content accessible to them as well? So all of these types of things need to be considered.
Yeah, Marshall, I just wanted to get your thoughts, because obviously, as your two colleagues alongside you have just mentioned there, it's, you know, it's such an impressionable age, isn't it? We're talking about children. They are impressionable. They form opinions early. Yeah, okay, technology is giving them a voice more than ever before at the same time. But I wonder if you can give us some of the indications or an insight in some of UNICEF's latest initiatives of how to harness the power of technology, how to give children a voice, and specifically give young people of determination a voice as well.
Yes, I think there is a lot of initiatives and programs involving children and get them into the topic and issues, such as 2 days ago I was honored also to be the moderator, like you are doing now, with 3 young leaders, I can say. Priyanka from Trinidad and Tobago, Kidan Jali from United States of America, and Noor Al-Blushi from United Arab Emirates. The panel was full of informations and energy from these young leaders. I believe that they are believing on their role of leading, and they are leading now. We are not looking for them as future leaders. Probably, if I also said more about giving them platforms for children to be involved in this, I think article number 12 gave them the rights of children to participate. It's also a lot of initiatives and programs under this articles giving areas to children. But let me little bit move to what is Dr. Tariq probably mentioned, and I like very much. We will have a meeting, by the way, after this.
Definitely.
We should have a talk.
I will even include you in our Reward Summit. Don't worry, I have a lot in mind. So
is it to have the high tech, the low tech, or we don't have nothing? That's exactly what happened when I visited those countries. There is scream, shouting from those kids in the villages, we want to learn, we want to go to schools. Either it is virtual or physical, they don't have the minimum. So this is what we are talking about. And what we are trying to do is to get those who have the high tech, as we said, in the East or West or Europe, to get them, as Doctor said, no one left behind. No one left behind. In the beginning, Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid said, whoever will not get into the bus will go. The next year he said, whoever will not go in the plane will go. Yeah. So the thing is going faster and faster. I don't know, it's probably the spaceship will be the next one. If you didn't catch, yes, but we cannot leave someone behind. An example I will give you in sports, so we can take it as in our things. The racing wheelchairs is being developed recently in the last 10 years. And many of the factories get the highest technology in the racing chairs. And it is around $15,000 to $20,000 per chair. So it's not affordable for African athletes or for American athletes. So we cannot say that's because of you're from X countries, you are able to buy it, you will go into this race with the standard chairs that the African or the Asian have it. Because there will be no equal opportunities for both. That one will go very fast. We'll finish the 100 meters with less than 15 seconds. So that we are creating some of the, how can we integrate this technology, and it's going to be more affordable for us. The last point which I wanted to mention is, yes, the statistics which you are mentioning is scary. But it is more when you see this situation. Why I'm telling this? Because I visited and I saw. Yes, we can read it in article or in news, but when you see it, the real fact, it's more. We always said it is a wake-up call for us. But the important thing is, what is about this wake-up? What we are going to do? Are we going back to the silent mode? I can see a lot of initiatives, promises here, and I'd be very, very happy if we can get them into the ground and work together. Because what I believe, when I ask the people from government of Kyrgyzstan, I met the governments and the privates and the organization. They said many organizations visited us, many, regional, international, and some other organization. Everyone visited and evaluate and they leave. That's it. So how many of them? 1 out of 10, they did some project there. You know why? Because probably the project cost $1 million, for example. Yeah. And my budget when I visited there is 100,000. So I leave. Sorry, thank you, take pictures and go. So why don't we get all these efforts if it is towards one goal, one target? So we get all these efforts, technology, money, expertise, whatever it is, and invest it in the same target. If we are facing or looking for the same target, we will take all the credit, all the exposure. And it's going to be good, and it will be implemented there in these countries.
We are getting loads and loads and loads of questions. I know we've got a number of students here who've got questions from the floor. We're getting loads of questions coming in from ABLF City as well at the moment. So rather than me take up the precious time of our panellists, I'm going to flow open to a couple of questions, if I may. First one's come through for Tariq. Okay, it's a question to His Excellency. Your Excellency, how do you think the curriculum, especially at the secondary education level, should change to groom inclusive and empathetic individuals at the moment? This one's coming through from Fatima right here in Dubai.
Well, Fatma, what I want to tell you, if I have the answer for that, I mean, I have solved the education problem globally. But I will answer you. I'll give you a good answer. As I mentioned earlier, the education system that we have today is an old system. It has been put in place 100, 120 years ago. Yeah. And you have a system. Part of the system is the curriculum. Curriculum is just one component of a much bigger system. You have curriculum, you have pedagogy, you have how classrooms look like, you have capacity building, you have teacher training, you have a lot of stuff going on there. Now, when it comes to curriculum, I think curriculum today, when it comes to countries around the world, from all the countries that we have, 70% of the curriculum is similar. The mathematics, the physics, the geology, all of these don't change.
Yeah.
What changes is history. And I always used to say, probably in Africa they will teach them about Nelson Mandela. In the Gulf, they'll teach us about Ibn Sina or Al-Jabr, who created the algebra. Probably in America about Martin Luther King.
Yeah.
Probably in Asia, Lao Tzu, he's there also. So these things change, but the essence of mathematics, physics, chemistry, they don't. Now the question is, the youth of today, what are they hooked on? Gadgets, tablets, iPhones, Samsungs, let's call them smartphones. And they're really hooked. I have 4 daughters and I see how they are. Now luckily the 4th daughter is just 2.5 years, but the rest are elder a bit.
She'll follow soon.
Okay. So probably in 2 years I'll go through that. But you cannot remove these gadgets and tell them, take a book and read. You cannot do that.
Yeah.
You're disturbing their mindset. They were born with these gadgets. These gadgets, the iPhone was born in 2007. The Blackberries were born at least 10, 12 years before that. So they were born with these gadgets. You cannot just come and tell them, take the book and go to school. We have to see what the youth wants. That's one. Number two, who are we to dictate the future of how the curriculum to be shaped without getting the youth of today and giving them a seat on the table and tell them, look, we have experience, we cannot dictate your future, because this is not only your future, this is the future of humanity. Please let us know what you guys are into today, because as much as I understand in gadgets, I'm there.
Yeah.
My father doesn't, or my mother doesn't, and my grandfather, my grandmother doesn't. And as much as they know it, new technologies and AI will come into place that our children of today won't understand AI.
Yeah.
So what is it we can do to have a system that we can take all the information from the youth to start putting a new curriculum system? Tom, do we need examinations? Probably yes, but do we need one final exam after 9 months of studying to determine the future of that child? I would say no. Probably quizzes, and take an average, one solution. But do we need geology in schools for youth in Africa and rural area? I think we should focus more towards probably what Zand is doing, digital financial literacy.
Yeah.
Do we have a program like this in the world? Do we have digital financial literacy? Because if all the youth wants money, rural area, they have digitization happening on, why can't we have a program into that? So what I am saying, the future curriculum should be a combination between the experience that we have gathered, 120 years, what the youth wants today, and we are looking into the younger generation to start putting something that is coping with the technological advancement.
You have just made great friends with my son, who's sitting his GCSEs at the moment. He doesn't think that we should have exams at the moment either. He thinks that they are outdated.
At least one old guy was right with the youth. So
rather than Dad go, no, you have to learn for your exams. Dina, we've got a question come through from you as well. This one's from Yasir in Sharjah, okay? And the question is this. Your Excellency, how can the developed nations help the developing countries in bridging the gap with regards to the fulfillment of the SDGs?
Well, thank you very much. Was the
This is from Asaf. From Yasir.
yes.
Yasir, yeah. Well, thank you, Yasir, for your question. And this is what we deal with on a daily basis, those of us in the United Nations and around the world that are working to support development. The key question here, and I think it came through the discussions we just had, is that know-how and knowledge exists in different parts of the world.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we try to also promote is what I would call knowledge exchange, in the sense that certain countries and certain societies will have certain information and know-how on how, we call it in the UN, we use the term best practices. There's different terms for these types of things. But the point is that I wanted to add, as global citizens, I think this is key, is that we need to further emphasize that, and I think the pandemic brought this to light, is that there is no such thing as a border. Yeah, we have these lines on the map for different reasons, you know, but the pandemic, for example, showed the world that these lines don't mean anything.
Yeah.
So what I would answer to our colleague is to say, as we look at the future of education and supporting each other, we need to think of ourselves as global citizens. Yes, we have to have been born in a certain place and living in a certain place for different reasons, but in the end we are citizens of the globe, and even in your own country you may be in a certain community, but you should be supporting across, meaning looking beyond yourself and where you stand. So the only way that we can make progress as a planet is if each of us sees how we can interconnect and remove the mentality of borders and inclusivity in only your circle, you know? Once we're able to bridge that, I think this is where the support comes from. I wanted to add on the education front, we talk about STEAM, STEM, STEAM,
Yep.
STEAM being adding also the arts into STEM. These are really important, but we also need the skills, and I think this is really important, meaning the leadership skills, the compassion skills, the ways to work with a team, the way to behave and engage in this global world. If we're not able to engage in a multilateral or a multicultural, environment, we're not going to be able to progress as humanity. I think technology has bridged the gaps, but that means somebody from one country on one side of the planet to another side of the planet can have a chat. If they don't know how to communicate with one another and to relate with one another, then it's not going to work, right? So all of this to me supports our efforts together in achieving the SDGs. It isn't just one part of the world supporting the other. It is all parts of the world supporting one another.
All the different skills, soft skills, hard skills.
Yeah,
and
so
otherwise.
it's not about developing and undeveloped, because who says who's developed and undeveloping based on what?
Yeah.
Whose
Right?
terminology is
Yeah,
it?
I mean, yeah, in the sense that a country that may have been classified for economic reasons as developing may be more developed in other areas.
Yeah.
So I think we need to be careful of this terminology and think more about the fact that we are a globe and we can support each other, and all countries can support each other in different ways.
Can I build
Of course
on
you
that?
can, yeah.
Very
absolutely.
quickly. Now, everything Dena said, she has set the foundation, the whole thing, on a mindset shift. That's what we need to do as countries, and take those boundaries of borders and developing country and non-developing country and developed nation.
Which are only in economic terms.
Exactly. What we need to do, if you're going to have a higher income country with a lower income country, let's put it that way, what needs to be done, and it exists, is to join forces through international platforms. We have to incubate more international platforms, and it has been done. And I'll name you a few, and you would know a few. Giga was one of them. I just mentioned
And
it.
we have the Expo as a good example.
We have Expo. We have Gavi.
Yep.
We have so UNESCO did the Global Education Coalition post-COVID-19 response. So if all these countries come in, because they join forces not only with governments, but even the private sector, even with academia, even with technological companies,
Civil society.
and civil society, these platforms brings everyone to the table. And if these countries join these kind of groups and platforms, I think that's the way forward. Because in the past, it was only about probably Gavi and maybe one more, but now after COVID, as Dena said, it has changed. A lot of platforms are getting mushroomed, and we have to believe in them.
Yeah, no, that's a really valid point. Taking on all perspectives, I think, is one of the messages we're getting across here. Majid, here's a question for you. We're doing a tour of the Emirates at the moment, because we're going down to Abu Dhabi for this question. This is from Alina, who's tuning in from Abu Dhabi. Ask Majid, how can the needs of people of determination in vulnerable sections be identified, and how can solutions then be tailored to their needs? This is from Alina.
Alina, thank you very much. greeting from Dubai to Abu Dhabi. Probably it is many things of this answers has been already answered by Dr. Tariq and Dr. here regarding getting all the reports from those professionals and expertise. Statistics is very important. Analyzing is very important. No one can deny the importance of studying the area or studying the needs of people with disabilities around, because the challenges is different between country to other. Our experience in that, how to get close more to the need of people with disabilities, I got all the MPCs once in Abu Dhabi after I've been elected. We call it Asia Talk together. So we had a brainstorm first.
Are you competing with ABLF also?
I don't know. I think, you
ABLF
took it from us.
ABLF Talks.
But we have the rights, Isa, صح? Copyright? Copyrights, yalla, okay. That's an open check now from ABLF. So I call it, in the beginning, they said, why do you want to do that? It is cost and it is, I said, no, it's fine. That was in 2017. And I said, let's talk. I got all the 45 countries. The first day was brainstorm. The second 3 days was a workshop. Now, we threw everything on the table. We heard from China, from Kyrgyzstan, from Kuwait, from Yemen, from every part of Asia, what are the real challenges? What do they recommend? What can they say from their point of view? Then we had the World Academy, which is partner with Asian Paralympic Committee. We got these workshops, a professional workshop, to set our strategic plan for the next 5 years with where we are, using, of course, the statistics and numbers in building our strategic plan. Where are we now in Asia in terms of developing our situation of our athletes and the elements work with athletes? Where do we want to go in 5 years from now? So they don't know, but they went through that, through the 3 days that they are creating their futures. But it's coming from them. I can, as a president, get this professional company to make a strategic plan for me, very nice infographics and statistics and numbers, and I presented as a new president in front of the General Assembly, and they would clap, but it doesn't touch the reality. Yeah. So now it's been built from them. So they will be the biggest believer on how can we implement it within our programs. So for example, we said that the Asia has the biggest number of disabled people in the world. Like we are talking about 80 million disabled people only in China. Yeah. More than 60 million in India. And the rest are between the 5 sub-regions we have in Asia. So we are talking about more than 65% of people with disabilities around the world is in my continent, in Asia. Of course, I'm not responsible for all of them, just part of them. But the representative in the last Paralympic Games in Rio doesn't reach the 20%. The podium, except China, of course, because they are out, they're always leading. The rest of the countries didn't get to the podium as a winner of the 3 places. Why? Because the elements working with the athletes are not qualified enough. I'm talking about coach, classifier, referees, volunteers, and administrator. That's what the statistic shows us. So we are building now a sustainable program to develop those elements in different parts in Asia. Because if you are qualified as a coach, I will be better as an athlete. My results will be better. It's not a matter of quantity, it's about quality. So also the devices and technology was one of the challenge. Lack of these communication between these countries, neighbor countries, was a challenge. So if you ask me again, or Elena, that's what is the real needs, it's to understand what is the challenges within the area that they are living with and customize a program which is suitable for this area. It's not one program for everywhere. That's my opinion.
And then you will be able to identify them.
Agree, Doctor.
Lena, I hope that answers your question. Really appreciate all those questions. Keep coming in at ABLF. Right. we've got some individuals in the room I know who are desperate to ask a few questions. So if you have got a question for our panel, feel free just to raise your hand and we can get a microphone over to you, or a very loud voice will do as well. Madam, we've got a question at the back of the room. Let's get a microphone over to you.
Hi, my name is Emily. I'm a youth ambassador from the USA Pavilion at Expo. I wanted to thank you guys so much for the talk today. I was wondering, so if post-pandemic we have a greater urgency with higher stakes for UN SDGs, we know we can mobilize those resources by having talks like ABLF and increasing the audience of people who hear about this. But where do we identify, or how do we identify those resources and decide where those resources are that we can mobilize when we have a greater urgency for those resources? Thank you.
Good question. Thank you very much indeed.
I just want to hear the question again exactly. So how, just the last part, how can we
Identify where those resources are that we want to mobilize. Like if we know that we need more resources, how do we decide where those resources
financial
are?
resources, is it? Or
financial or otherwise.
Okay.
Do you want to pick up on that?
Yeah, of course,
Do you
Dr.
pick up on
Tariq, yeah.
Look, it all depends what the issue is, right? So if it's education, again, I'll come back to my last point. You have platforms that looks into it. If it's a cyclone or a typhoon, you will have a lot of wash programs there, sanitation programs. We have a lot of global consortiums or platforms that are looking into wash, whether those are washing schools or not, that's something else. You have Gavi for vaccinations. So the more platforms we have, the more unity we have, the more alignment we have, what's happening is more coordination is happening at the highest level. The problem that we have today globally, we don't have coordination at the highest level because everyone is working in silos. And let's say some categories, they do have some kind of alignment. I'll go back to Gavi again because Gavi is one of the greatest examples on alliances and how platforms should work. And they're very well structured and they're connected in every single country and they have a running system. But because of that success, it mushroomed something called Education Cannot Wait, which is a UN, it's a fund under the UN for education in emergencies. What happens in any pandemic, any emergency, any flooding, any earthquake, everything that has the necessity for survival gets prioritized. Education is not survival. Education becomes secondary. So what Education Cannot Wait does, it prioritizes education towards the necessity of what is needed for children because they don't want children to be, they don't want education to be interrupted. Now, how can you do that? You have to have governments, you have to have the World Bank, you have to have the UN system, you have to have the education experts, you have to have all of them together. So my answer to you, mobilizing resources, let's call them entities in the beginning, and these entities could be donors as well. Mobilizing resources, the more platforms we have globally and very well structured of those and more aligned it is, and it's aligned with the global agenda, and that's the most important thing. And coming back to the question that was from the other person, that having these countries aligning their strategies towards one unified approach, that's where your answer will be, your question will be answered.
Majid, Dena, anything to add to that?
Well, I was just going to say, and just to add, again, it's about understanding who the stakeholders are. So as we work in a variety of areas, as Tariq mentioned, we look at and you scan the stakeholders. And what's important is not only looking at the ones that are famous and known to everyone, but to actually really do a scan and your research on who is working in this area and who could be included that hasn't been included. And then by doing that through the various platforms he mentioned or various networks, and this is where technology becomes useful, it's very much easier for us to network and to get to understand who's doing what. This is a lot of the work that we tend to do, is trying to understand who's working on what and who's been left out and needs to be brought in. So I hope that helps.
We've got time just for a couple more, and I know we've got a couple more students on the floor for us. We'll get the student over there, and then of course we'll move over to this side. So let's get a microphone over. Where are you guys from, by the way?
Hello, good afternoon, first of all. So, my name is Aditya, and I'm presenting the BITS Plani University
BITS,
from the
okay.
academic city. And first of all, very good afternoon, everyone. So my question is directed to Dr. Tariq. So sorry, it's a question from the past, but a decade back, the Dubai Cares started a program directed towards girl education in the country of Comoros. So Comoros is one of the most poorest nation in the world, an island nation in the Indian Ocean. And fortunately, it was a success. So what were the strategies and initiatives taken by the Dubai Cares to make that a success, and how the world as a whole can learn from it?
Don't be upset from me. In Comoros, we did not do girls' education. It was early childhood development, and we had 2 programs, and I know them by heart, and I was there. But having said that, we have one model. We follow this model. Whether it's girls' education, whether it's education, early childhood education, whether it's youth empowerment, whether it's secondary education, whatever it is, we follow one model. And if you set that model, system, call it a system, call it a model, call it a framework. If you have a success story on a framework, on a model, on a system, on an ecosystem that works, all you have to do is plug and play. That's it. Girls, remove this and add this. Early childhood development, well, add this and keep the girls because they're part of it, but maybe you should remove that. So we have a formula, and I'll share with you what's our model, and I'll share with you what's been our success story. First of all, you go to a country, you study the country. What is needed? Does that country need? So I'll give you an example. I had a big debate with my team at Dubai Cares of going to Turkmenistan or not. And I'm saying Turkmenistan has a need. My team says, yeah, but they have 86% penetration rate to quality education, and schools are occupied by 86%. There are other countries in need. So one, you look at the country. We follow certain indexes in the world. One of them is the HDI, the Human Development Index of the UNDP. The UNDP is fed by the OECD report on education. So the education department of the OECD feeds it to the HDI. And the HDI determines which is the #1 country and which is not. I'm not going to go into politics. I was going to say something, but thank God I stopped. You know, my point is, if you put suicide rates into those countries, some countries which fits into the first 10 will go to the bottom probably. But anyways, but then you have the Global Education Monitoring Report of UNESCO's as well, and that tells you every single country what's the education status. Number 4, we ask our partners. We ask UNICEF. We ask UNESCO, Save the Children. What is the status of that country? I have my own team which does continuous research and gatherings like this, networking with people, listening here and there what's happening in a country. We come to find out that there's this country, they have a new strategy on education, their government is unified now, less corruption rates. Now you got the country identified, then you select your partner. Your partner has to have a relationship with the Ministry of Education. And this is the #1 rule. You come from the front door. You come through the Ministry of Education. You don't do it anywhere else. We don't fund ministries directly. We do it through implementing partners, meaning the UNICEFs and the UNESCOs and from UN, and then the Save the Children's and the Plan International NGOs. And in India, for instance, with Pratham we deal with, so those are local NGOs. But they have to be recognized by the international community and the UN system. Then we see what the government wants. Do they need prioritization, or they want us to identify the gaps? So we identify the gaps, we reprioritize what's needed now, and then we come in and say, this is what we will do. We don't do X, Y, and Z. We do A, B, and C. Out of the A, B, and C, we will do just A and B for now, because this is our strategy for this year. We then co-design the program together with our implementing partner, and it becomes a program to that country. 3 to 5 years down the road, you get a success, and the secret recipe to our success is continuous, rigorous monitoring and evaluation. Every week, on average, I have a team member flying to a country to monitor and evaluate that country, and then towards the end, I do a final evaluation and I do a research component on that thematic on that country. We get all the findings, we tweak programs in between, we sit with community members, and then we take it to the international community as a case study that this was successful. This has been. So if it's Comoros, if it's Philippines, if it's girls' education, if it's youth empowerment, you just have a framework and a model and you follow it and it's plug and play.
Big thanks to all the team from BITS Pilani and the student delegation for being with us here. We've probably got time for one more. Any more questions from the floor, from this side or that side? If there are no more questions from the floor, and I've just been told we've got we have got loads of questions, just haven't got time to get through all of them that are coming through virtually. Of course you can, sir, yeah.
I'm not going to talk. I just want to say we're doing 2 big, great things in the next 3 weeks. Please, everyone in this room, everyone who's watching, we're hosting the largest education summit in the world. We're getting heads of state, we're getting ministers of education, ministers of youth, ministers of technology, ministers of AI, as we have in the UAE. We're getting heads of UN agencies, CEOs of private companies, chairmen and chairwomen of the private sector, researchers, academia, youth, teachers, everyone talking about the future of education. It will be 3 days. Day 1 on youth, skills, and the future of work. Day 2, innovation in education. Day 3 is about financing education. We have our strategic partners who are just going to go through them very quick so you know who we're working with and how we're creating the content. We have UNICEF, UNESCO. We have the Global Partnership for Education, the World Bank, the OECD, the World Economic Forum. We have UNHCR, WFP, UN Special Envoy for Global Education, ITU is coming in right now, and we have Education Cannot Wait, which is the fund that I told you about, Education in Emergencies. Now, we, Dubai Cares, have partnered with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in the UAE and Expo 2020 to co-host this event. What's the point? After 3 days, we're coming out with an outcome report that is in line with the UN Secretary General's Our Common Agenda initiative, but it will also feed into the UN Summit of Transformation of Education. It's next year, hosted by the UN under the UN Secretary General. The outcome report will feed into all of these systems. Please be there, and everyone who's watching, please tune in.
What's it called?
It's called Rewired.
And is it going to be here?
It's in Dubai Exhibition Center at Expo 2020. And we're going to launch a global declaration on connectivity for education.
You heard it here first.
Dates.
It's 12, 13, and 14 December. 12, 13, 14 December.
Before we wrap up on that one, because I just wanted one little closing statement from each of you, and I think that's a really nice way to do it, Tariq, because one thing that has taken me by surprise about Expo 2020 and the platform that it has provided us, because we were forewarned about Expo. We knew about this for quite some time, but I don't think anyone really expected to see what it has delivered in the first 6-7 weeks that we've seen. But one thing that I'm just taking away from your point there is that just this platform for discussions, something that we've been talking about during our little discussion here, just one of the number of discussions going on. So I just wanted to go down the panel for closing thoughts, and it is just closing thoughts, just final thoughts on, in your opinion, what's been the success of Expo 2020 so far, and what will be the sort of ongoing success, potentially the legacy success as well? What we're most proud of about Expo 2020 so far? Tariq, anything you can add to Rewired?
I'll do very quick. It's legacy, Tom. You just said it. You know, if you incubate something, if you create something during Expo, with Expo or without Expo, but during this time aligned with Expo, have a legacy plan. If you have a legacy plan, that will be continuous and that will go on. So to me, it's about legacy.
Dena?
I think it's really important for us to recognize that, of course, Expo, as we know, is the first gathering of us in person. I hadn't seen Tariq since the pandemic. And the importance of, yes, we have technology, we can do things online, but face-to-face also has its value.
Yeah.
So the fact that Expo is focusing on sustainability as its key theme and solutions for a better future and global collaboration and cooperation. I think these messages, especially after the pandemic, I mean, these messages were planned to be part of the Expo prior to the pandemic, but given that it happened after the pandemic, it has so much more meaning than it did prior to the pandemic.
I agree.
So I mean, that wasn't planned, that was God's plan, but But the point is that
In-person convening.
in-person convening, but the whole importance of global collaboration, as per my earlier comment, and that Expo now exemplifies how important that is for humanity.
Dena, thank you so much indeed. And Majid, final thoughts from you as well. What are your takeaways from Expo thus far?
As I mentioned before in the interview with Dubai, I'm very proud to have Expo here, even if it is in 2021 and it's Expo 2020. But I think everyone should take the full advantage of Expo. Connecting minds, creating futures is the theme of Expos. But beyond that, I think everyone should share, because it's a huge platform now, getting everyone together. Within 6 months, all nations, experiences, everything is available. So why do I start and waste efforts or money if Dr. Dena is already reached to a level in this project, for example? So let's work together. We share experiences. We exchange ideas. We should create the future, not creating the future. As Sheikh Mohammed said, now I started to believe him. Bring the future here. You should bring the future. I know that there is many challenges around us, the pandemic, natural disasters, whatever it is, but look at it in one eye, try to solve it. Don't waste all your time and say, who is looking to the future now? We should solve this. No, look at it in one eye, try to solve it. On the other eye, try to see the future. Bring it back to avoid more of these circumstances in the future. Engage every part of the community, child, youth, adults, women, men, everybody. This Wired, we are very proud also to be part. We will attend all these things because it touches also the children with disabilities as well, with the UNICEF also working very hard with Asian Paralympic Committee to give them this platform. So I think anyone will waste the big tree or the fruitful of this big tree of Expo, he's wasting a lot of things. So let's have the full advantage and fruitful outcomes from Expo.
Listen, one thing is using forums like this to prompt questions, to prompt further conversations. And just before we wrap up here, happy to say that we've got a very special guest with us here as well, who's here at Expo, being influenced by all things Expo. One final question from a special guest, if that's okay, sir.
Thank you very much. My name is Mogobo David Magabe. I'm the Consul General of South Africa to Dubai. I've been here for almost 4 years. And I've, on a number of occasions, interacted with Dr. Tariq through the Dubai Care. I don't necessarily have a question, but I have a comment to make. But firstly is to appreciate the good work that Dubai Care through Dr. Tariq and the support that they've been doing to a number of countries in the African continent, in the developing countries at the most. And I agree and concur with one of his sentiments that he has made to this forum today, that in collaborations, we can do more than what they've been doing. And therefore calling upon partners, particularly coming from the continent itself, on partners that still need to be empowered for sustainability. And I'm sure we can collaborate in those particular areas moving together. Thank you very much.
You're right to see, we can't thank you enough. I personally love your country. I'm sure we all love your country. Apologies about the rugby results at the weekend, though. Apologies about that. Okay? We'll forget that one. That's all right. You're still world champions, though, okay? Listen, it's a lovely way to finish it off. So thank you so much indeed for your kind
Always
comments.
sport, huh?
It always comes down to sport.
Just to clarify, the declaration on connectivity that we're launching is a UNESCO declaration. So we're doing it with the UN. It's a UN declaration.
Yeah.
So that's where we will get all the private sector, the civil society, and all the countries together towards digital connectivity for education.
Bless you. Thank you so much indeed. And ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for our three panellists.
Thank you.
Big thanks to Tariq, to Dena, and of course, Majid. Big thanks to all of you for tuning in at the ABLF City, for all of you being with us here at Expo 2020 Dubai. Make sure that you keep in tune with our social media channels and, of course, all the details online for the next talks. It promises to be a brilliant one. Until then, thanks very much from everyone here in Dubai. Goodbye.